everyone out there, how's it going? Welcome back to Screen Speak. I don't know why I said it like that, but I chose to. It's the podcast that is all about movies, life, and so much more. I'm Jordan Anderson. This is my podcast, and you're here. And by being here, that means you get my thanks and deep appreciation for you taking the time to listen to this over any other podcast out there, because they are all terrible, and mine is the best. That makes no sense. Okay, so Mr. Adam Wall has returned to the podcast. Adam, how are you? I don't think it's picking it up.
Damn it.
You can talk with your mouth full.
You're right. That's right. I've been eating some chips because this was very last minute and there was no planning involved. So
it is true.
That's why I've been eating the chips. I always heard that chips on a podcast is it's a really good combination. So
like chips and talking with the chips in your mouth. I think the only thing that would actually perhaps make it better is if you had like the bag with you so that you could get the crinkle effect of reaching in.
Just constantly. I do have the bag on me, but it's like a Costco paper bag. So sadly,
here, can you like put it by your microphone and like shake it around? Wait, why is it? No, it's still not doing it. It's like it's canceling out the audio. Does it know?
It might, honestly. It might just like reduce static. This is a pretty nice microphone, man.
It must. Gosh, it can't even allow for a funny chip bit.
That's so dumb, dude.
Well,
technology's the worst.
Do you know what's not dumb?
What's not dumb?
V for Vendetta.
So stupid.
That was an excellent segue into that. Okay. All right. So we're here today. A bit late, honestly, because I was actually going to be releasing this initially on November the 5th, because if you're familiar with V for Vendetta, you will know that November the 5th holds significance in the movie. So I was trying to do that, and I'll give a little insight into why that didn't happen real quick before we get into everything else. But I had recorded an episode for V for Vendetta on Wednesday, which would have this past Wednesday, which would have been November the 3rd. And I was about like an hour or so into it. I had another guest on. It was John Ortman, who I had on, I believe, for episode 3 or 4 of the podcast. So I offered to have him come back, and he was a good sport and came over. But then my whole setup on Audacity, where I was recording it just completely crashed, and I couldn't recover the audio. And I think we spent like an hour or so talking about it, and I just lost the whole thing. I was not happy, and I tried to just see, I'm like, well, maybe he can come back and do it. And we were kind of talking about it, but the schedules didn't work. So I was like, okay, John, you suck. Let me get somebody else that actually wants to be here on the podcast. So I got Adam to come back. And John, I'm just kidding. If you're listening, this is not against you. It's just Adam was available. So oh wait, Adam, you're muted again. You did it.
Eat dicks, John. I'm just a better friend, that's all there is to it, really.
The gauntlet has been laid out or laid down. Some people say that, like, it's what is it? You threw shade against someone? Do people
throw shade? Yes, people do say that.
Well, I wasn't sure. I wasn't like if that was. I don't know.
You don't know what it's lit means, so that makes sense to me.
Speaking of what's not lit. What happened with Travis Scott and his concert?
Dude. It's so I'm
sorry,
bad.
I shouldn't laugh, but why don't we talk about that real quick for a second, because
let's do that.
To us having the segment at the end of the Shining episode talking about it's lit. So I mean, it's pretty bad. It's like what, 8 or 9 people are dead, right?
Yeah. Did you hear about what happened? I was literally reading an article about this before I hopped on this podcast.
Okay, so I will tell you my version of what I know, and then you fill me in, because I don't know. It's all recent.
Go for it.
I just saw that it was at some festival. I think it was part of a festival. I don't think it was just his show. And I think there was like a 50,000 people, I want to say. I'm not really sure, again, for accuracy's sake. But all I saw is that there was some mad rush, apparently, to get to the front of the show. And what it seems like what happened is that there was people that likely got trampled, and maybe also indoor suffocated because of like the lack of oxygen with like everybody being so tightly packed in and just clustering like that.
Hmm.
And I also don't know if perhaps some died as a result of drugs, or or if some people also maybe died as like a result of like pyrotechnics from the show, because it did look like they had like some flames and kind of some crazy setup for the stage, and maybe people got too close and got just lit on fire. I don't know. So I mean
Yeah.
that's just kind of what I heard. Like, oh, and I heard the age ranges of the people too. There's like a 14-year-old dead and 17 and 20. I think the oldest was 27 or something.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's really sad. Yeah.
Yeah, what did you hear about it?
So what I was seeing was they kind of are putting a little bit of the blame on Travis Scott specifically. So a lot of these music festivals, the problem with music festivals as a whole is the people who actually organize and run these music festivals. It takes so much organization and
Yeah.
like logistics to get these things running and actually get them running smoothly. But the people who actually organize these things are usually people that are on fucking drugs, or they're rappers themselves, like Travis Scott. Like Travis Scott organized this whole fucking thing. And do you expect Travis Scott to really be a really good logistical mind and like think about what's best for the fans and these sorts of things? He doesn't. He doesn't give a shit because he cares about music and doing drugs and like hanging out. So that leads to a lot of issues with a lot of different music fests. So you see things like Fire Fest, and you see things like what happened in the
Mhm.
70s. There was a lot of issues with music festivals. And
Yeah.
a lot of music festivals today still have the same issues where it's crowded with fucking people. There's not enough logistics, not enough bathrooms, not enough staff. Things like that really lead to issues with music festivals sometimes. This specific one, the
Yeah.
biggest issue was they oversold the show. So there's a fuck ton of people seeing Travis Scott. And then they also let like random people in. So a bunch of people that didn't have tickets to the show basically came in like illegally in a sense,
Okay.
which led to like a fuck ton of people being at the show. And if there's too many people, it just gets really crowded.
Yeah.
And that's what led to like the suffocation and people trampling each other.
Yeah.
And it's really scary. And honestly, it's pretty
No, it
sad.
is.
But
Yeah.
yeah,
I,
it's
I know I know the yeah, I didn't know about the capacity issues on that, which it makes sense. And that, I mean, I could get it. I think it's more alarming though what you said is that if even today, by today's standards, there's still music festivals or things like this being put together very kind of haphazardly and sloppy, and not having the proper resource and backing behind it. Um, you know, I don't pretend to be like an expert event planner on that. I have actually helped plan some events for like work stuff and whatnot before, but obviously never anything to that type of scale. But yeah, I mean, it does get you. I don't know. I mean, it gets you thinking about like how shows like that need to just be more mindful of that. I mean, because like to me, like there almost shouldn't be an excuse for that. I mean, like it's
yeah,
there is some. I mean, people should be held at fault, I think, for some of
it's
this.
it's
I
pretty
don't
bad.
know.
Honestly, like you could put a lot on like government needs to crack down on these sorts of things because this is a big issue in the 70s. So when you had things like Woodstock, and there were a bunch
Yeah.
of similar things compared to Woodstock, but basically the government wasn't really involved in these sort of decisions, and it really fucked things up because you'd have tens of thousands of people that would just come into these farms in the middle of nowhere and expect to have like drinking water and bathrooms, and these things just did not exist. So a lot of people, like, it was very unsanitary, and a lot of people died even, and
Yep.
everyone's on drugs too. So it's like it's a bad combination, and the governments need to make sure things like this don't really happen. And honestly, Travis Scott should probably take a lot of the blame for this happening as well.
Yeah.
But it's pretty sad. But
Well, I'll want to see, because I probably will follow the story like a lot of people will, but I do think there's more information that still needs to be shed on the whole
yeah,
thing. I think from what's been reported, a lot of it you can already kind of draw the conclusion of some of the stuff that's happened, but like I want to see like some of like the autopsy reports. I want to see like more like firsthand witness accounts and hear from
yeah,
like the actual whoever was behind putting the show up, whether it was, Travis himself or, if he had some other people helping. I don't really know. But yeah, the whole thing, just reading about it over, I guess, the last couple of days. Yeah, I mean, I feel bad very much for the family and, people just wanting to go to have a good time. I don't
yeah,
think they
dude.
were suspecting that something like that would happen. So it's It's pretty bad way to go out too. I mean, it sounds like
No,
chaotic
it
and
does not sound very
terrifying.
fun. Yeah, no, it
You
does not
know,
sound very fun at all. So
I want to say real quick. So, Adam, do you remember this would have been? I want to say this would have been about 2 years ago. I could be off, but do you remember that Cedar Rapids, like here in Cedar Rapids, they had attempted to put on this new music festival that failed miserably?
I heard about that. I
Yes,
wasn't really a part of it, but I do remember it was sort of a thing.
it was
Because
for Maroon 5.
that's right, yeah. But like, didn't
Yeah.
like nobody buy tickets or something like that?
Well, so
Or
there's a couple of a couple of highlight like bullet points that I'll shed on it just because it's related to this music industry stuff or music festival stuff. So
yeah.
the whole festival was brand new, so like it did not exist to the city before, and there
Mhm.
was this company through the city of Cedar Rapids. And again, I think I'm saying this correctly. Somebody could fact check me in case I'm not an expert, which I'm not.
Yeah.
Um, so it was an event company through the city of Cedar Rapids that was putting this whole thing together. It was supposed to be the first of many annual music festivals. They were trying to draw in like more mainstream talent. They
Mhm.
were going to be doing it down by the Nubo area. They had this whole area that they were excavating out for it. And they're inviting all these different vendors from outside states and whatnot to come and sell their shit and blah blah blah. But anyway, what I heard went horribly wrong about it was that one, they just kind of rushed the whole thing. Like they didn't take their time with getting a lot of the logistics right. So they rushed the whole thing. The people behind it didn't really consult with people that had experience in putting
Uh,
things like that together. So I think there were a lot of chances taken. And what ultimately ended up happening is the thing you said, where like no one ended up showing up.
yeah.
They they did a really weird, sloppy job of promoting it. Like it was promoted very poorly. It was
Uh,
very poor promotion. And then on top of it, the price for like the whole show was obnoxious. I think it was like just for like a general admission seat, it was like over $300.
are
Like
you serious?
yeah,
Holy
like
Jesus, dude.
something crazy. And it like I
Oh
said,
my
it's not even
gosh.
for like you don't even get like any like real great VIP deal, or
No,
anything
yeah.
like that. It's just like here, come to this crappy prepared festival and shell out a bunch of cash for Maroon 5 and like one other person.
Yeah.
And and then the other thing I heard, and this was actually from people that went, because I did
Mhm.
talk to a few people that actually went there, and they said that the whole area was like just like on like this like gross dirt patch. Like it wasn't
Oh.
really like even a nice area. So like you couldn't even like bring like your own chairs and blankets to sit because I think like the ground was kind of wet and muddy and just terrible. And
Oh.
also I think like you said, just like lack of bathrooms and other things. But I remember that whole thing happening and just thinking, well, I was really sad because the whole thing went so poorly. I'm like, this is gonna be like such a freaking gut punch to the city for them ever trying to draw in mainstream talent like that again. I
Yeah.
think it really hurt the city's reputation for being able to host things
Oh
like that.
yeah.
And then the last thing I'll say about it that I heard is that the company that again was putting this whole thing on,
Mhm.
they also like dropped out of paying people. Like
Oh really?
they like owed
Oh
construction
my god,
companies
dude.
and stuff money, and they're just like, yeah, we can't pay you because we bombed so hard on the attendance. We made no money off this. So
Mhm.
there were lawsuits I know that happened, and it like I'm actually pretty sure the event director for the event like definitely got fired. Like I think
Jesus.
they lost their livelihood for sure.
Oh my
But
god, dude.
anywho, that's there's a lot that goes into putting on a concert, and very sorry to hear about Travis Scott and what happened with that.
Yeah, dude. It's pretty sad. I feel bad.
It's
But
actually it's like the first time I've talked about like a current event on here. That's
really?
yeah. I mean,
Wow.
I normally keep it about the movies and whatnot, but sometimes these things just happen.
It's
But
like this, it's last minute, That's just like how this podcast is as well.
it's true. But that said, you talked about the government needing to control this, and the government is a part of V for Vendetta. So
Government overreach, man. It's government overreach.
it's true. It's true. It's there. Okay, so we're gonna talk about we're actually gonna talk about V for Vendetta right now.
Yeah,
So
let's do it.
this movie came out in March of 2006, March 17th of 2006, if you really want to know the truth. And It's got Hugo Weaving as the title character V. It's got Natalie Portman as Evie. John Hurt is Chancellor Sutler, I think. And then there's just a handful of really great British actors. Stephen Ray. Why can't I think of some of the other ones on there? I'm holding
Stephen
up.
Fry.
Stephen Ray, Stephen Fry. There's a couple of Stevens in here, but they're both good. But anywho, this movie is, I would arguably say, is now considered a classic in certain groups. It's now like 15, 16 years old, which is pretty crazy. But I'm holding up the 4K right now for the movie, and I'm just gonna rattle off the synopsis on here, and then we'll get into it. So, actually, okay, this is actually a terrible synopsis, but I'm gonna read it. Who is the man who hides his scarred face behind a mask? Hero or madman? Liberator or oppressor? Who is V, and who will join him in his daring plot to destroy the totalitarian regime that dominates his nation? That's just a bunch of questions. That's not a synopsis. Okay. From the creators of the Matrix trilogy comes V for Vendetta, an arresting and uncompromising vision of the future based on the powerfully subversive graphic novel. Again, not saying anything about the story. So, okay. Thanks 4K movie for trying to help me out there. What I would actually say the story for this is, I'll make my own synopsis up for it, is that it is set in the near future, around the 2020s or 2027. They never, I don't think, explicitly say when this movie is taking place in, but it's essentially saying that there was a war that broke out in America, and that it spread and extended across the seas into England and other different places, and that it caused at least the United Kingdom to forego whatever previous democracy was there, and they adopted a totalitarian, basically dictatorship, very similar to like George Orwell's 1984, and very Hitler and that kind of tyrannical, shitty government. So it's not great. But what I want to talk about first on here is that there's definitely some really stark, haunting real life comparisons that actually are more relatable now than they were when this movie first came out, if you think about it. So one, I talked about the time frame that this is that the movie's set in, and it's arguably started because of a virus. You get where I'm going with this?
Oh.
Right? It's started because of a virus, and it causes war and division and fear to run rampant throughout the government, and then also throughout the citizens. And yeah, I mean, actually, just it's pretty kind of messed up how some of those elements are quite relatable in the last few years. I'm not trying to make a political statement here, but I think anybody would be saying, or anybody would agree, that the last few years in this country, America, it's been very divisive for a number of different reasons. So I don't know, Adam, when you think of this movie, can you understand why some of those comparisons are there?
No, yeah, very much so. Vaccines vaccines are going to make us all bow down to our overlords at some point, I'm sure. It's just the way things work.
Well, if the vaccine gets in me, that causes me to want to buy Microsoft products, right?
That's the key, really. Microsoft is the answer, I think, to all of this at the end of the day. No, this movie is very good. I honestly feel like the presence of V for, like, the theme of V for Vendetta, and the whole like government is like taking over and it's a fascist thing. It's a little bit overdone. I feel like it's something that has been discussed quite a lot, but it's a very enjoyable movie, and they do it in a way where it's like, oh, you don't know what's going to happen next and what's going on. Like, I feel like the themes of this movie are a little bit overplayed at times, but I really enjoy the movie as a whole. I really like the action in this movie. I really like just kind of the way they keep like laying down the line and the mysteries that are coming next and everything.
The narrative structure for the movie is I think it is really good, because if you think about it, there's a handful of different stories that are being told at the same time. So first, you have the story of Evie, Natalie Portman, who is this woman that accidentally gets involved with this terrorist and/or freedom fighter named V,
Hmm.
and you're just following the story from her point of view, trying to just navigate and survive in this dystopian future. And so
Yeah.
there's that story. You have the story of V, of course, themselves trying to figure out who is this mystery person, what are his intentions. He's going to cause a revolution, what's going on with that. And then
Hmm.
you also have the story of the detectives, of them trying to solve the whole thing throughout. So there's a
Yeah.
whole like underlying detective narrative going. And then the fourth storyline, I would argue, is all the political end of it, where the government is trying to stop the terrorist V, and they're trying to control the narrative through a lot of different things on that. So there's a lot of different storylines that are being bobbed and weaved throughout the movie, but I would say that this movie does handle it very well, and actually pretty seamlessly. It all blends together very well, and it makes for a pretty damn good movie. So one thing I'm gonna show you, Adam, I had actually talked about it in the now lost episode that no one will ever hear. But I'm doing this over Zoom right now, so Adam can see this. But do you see this collector set that I have for the
Oh my
movie?
gosh, dude, that's so
Dude,
fancy. It's like
it's
steel.
it's
Oh my
his
god.
prison cell. It's his prison cell.
Oh, dude,
Yeah.
that's pretty sick.
This is just one of the cooler collector's editions I have, and they only released this in 2020.
Oh wow.
So it's very new, but I'm gonna unpack it here quick so you can see what's in it, because it
Oh
is
my
cool.
god.
It's worth talking about. So the inside, very cool. It has the rose, so it's like it has a rose. What would you call this? A print, I guess, rose
Yeah.
print. You know
Uh-huh.
the
Well, it's like shiny too. Or
Yeah,
it's just the inside of the box as a whole, right?
yeah, it's the inside of the box. It's very cool. The first thing that it comes with on here is this print, which is cool, of a letter that the director wrote for the release of this movie. And it's actually pretty cool because he literally cites like COVID-19 and like the comparisons, and like why he's like proud that in a weird way this movie says something, you know.
Really?
It still says something after all these years. And
Dude.
then it has this cool, very, very shiny book that has it's packed full of all kinds of stuff. It's got notes on a scene, it's got some of the original concept art from the movie, shows how they made some stuff.
Mhm.
It's very cool. So like this is like an excellent read, like if you're on the toilet and you just want to, you want to learn about movies while
Yeah, dude.
not being on your phone. It's an
Uh-huh.
excellent read for that. And then of course you got the 4K itself. So it's very cool. You know.
Dude, is this the one of the cooler what's the coolest collector set you own, would you say?
Oh, the
Or
coolest.
what's your favorite?
Do you mind if I grab it here? I'm
Yeah,
gonna grab.
grab it, dude.
I'm gonna
Yeah.
grab it. Fill the air while I grab it.
All right. Mine how do I fill the air? Last night I had a dream about I was there was this internet personality, right? And with this internet personality, I was telling him he was like 5'2". I don't think he's actually 5'2" in real life, but I was telling him to stop going on Twitter because it's ruining his life and he's becoming very sad because of it. And he basically like stared at me and then walked away and was like ignoring me as I was telling him this. And I thought it really meant something, you know? Anyway, Jordan, what is this collector set?
I'm glad. You handled that well. You handled that
Yeah, man.
very well. Okay, so no, this is by far like the granddaddy, like my favorite collector's set that I have, and it is not to be like, ooh, like look at me, but it is the most expensive set in my collection, like hands down.
Dang.
So again, I'm just showing this to Adam. You guys can't see it, but I will describe it in intricate detail for your ears so that
Oh
you're
yeah.
not missing out. So it's this right here. Can you see this?
Oh, the Lord of the Rings, baby.
The Lord of the Rings 4K limited edition. This is definitely a limited edition set.
Damn.
So it's like a fake book, so you can see like it looks like a book. It's very
Mhm.
cool. But it opens and it has a cool, amazingly detailed map of Middle Earth. It actually comes with a really good replica of the One Ring. Like it's legit pretty good, you
Dude, that's
know.
sick. Yeah.
And then It just comes with the 4K set of
Before,
the theatrical and extended editions,
oh my
all
gosh.
in one case. And honestly, it's like there's not like a lot else on here. Like you're mainly paying for the presentation because this is a really cool case. It's really excellently packaged, but
Yeah, that's sick.
this was not cheap.
Not
Like
really.
this was I think I paid $130 for it.
Holy Jesus, Jordan.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean, that's really sick though, and it's something you care about. Like Lord of the Rings is your like absolute favorite, right?
Well, I mean, I wouldn't say. I mean, like, of course, like it's a favorite series of movies. I do love them, but yeah, I mean, I can't help it, man. You know, I love my physical media, and I
Yeah.
do love a good collector set. Like, I have a couple of other collector sets that I have too because I just really think that that's one of the things that physical media is different on is like if you get a really cool one, you know, for someone that really is going to appreciate it, it holds
Hmm.
its value and it looks great on the shelf. And I don't know, you know, I'm a fan, so I want to support this stuff.
Yeah,
But
dude.
yeah, it's the only bummer I would say about it is that the 4K set on this, it doesn't have like jack for bonus features. That's
Uh,
the only gripe I would have, but and I'm not buying this. I want to be clear about this. I don't know if you've heard, but they have the ultimate Middle Earth 4K Granddaddy collector set, and the
uh-huh.
thing is like $300 or more, and it's got
Jesus
no. I'm
Christ.
serious. It has 60 discs with it,
Oh my gosh, dude.
like because it
I
has
wonder how
all the
many.
Lord of the Rings, all the Hobbit, all like every edition of it
Okay.
possible, and then there's bonus features, and like I
We
I
got to
I
marathon it. We got to marathon it at some point. The whole thing.
I've actually never done it.
Really, you've
I
never marathoned all three Lord of the Rings?
no. I'm talking Hobbit and Lord of the Rings, the
Oh,
whole story.
jeez, dude, that would be the Hobbit would be a slog is a problem, dude. I think
Yeah,
getting through the Hobbit would be a harder part. Like that third Hobbit movie is just garbage, I think. And it's just like
yeah.
after you have 6 hours of Hobbit, just the Hobbit.
Do you know there's extended editions of those? As if they
There
weren't
are?
long. Yeah, yeah, as if they weren't long enough already.
What? Oh, Jesus Christ, dude.
Yeah, but no, I wanted to show you that we were talking about the 4K collector set, so I couldn't help myself, and you know, I knew you
Oh
would
yeah.
appreciate it. But
Yeah, dude. It's pretty cool.
so let's go back. Let's go back to V for Vendetta.
Yeah.
Do you know a lot about like the historical influence with it, like with Guy Fawkes and that whole story? Because Guy Fawkes is a real person. Like that's not just made up for the sake of the story in the comic book. He is real.
Oh, really? I do not know. I honestly do not know the backstory of it or like what's going on.
Well, I'm gonna share the little notes that I have
Nice, dude.
that are on it. But the movie talks about it too.
Hmm.
So from what I was able to gather, Guy Fawkes, he was part of what is considered it's called the Gunpowder Plot of 1605, and it was essentially a failed assassination attempt against King James at the time. And
Oh, okay.
apparently, King James and his whole regime, or whatever you want to call that,
Hmm.
for years prior, he had been very discriminative and oppressive towards Catholics. And I think it's
Oh,
a specific group of Catholics. I can't say for certain, but he really did not like the Catholic monarchy at the time and was really trying to just get him out. Like he didn't like him. And
okay.
so Guy Fawkes was part of a group to be like, well, we don't care about that. We're going to rise up against this government and take them out. So they had this whole big thing of gunpowder that they were trying to sneak under the building of Parliament to blow it up and kill him. Right? It's pretty extreme. And if you
Jeez.
remember the opening of the movie, it does show actually that's the very start of the movie. It shows Guy Fawkes back in the 1600s getting caught for this,
Hmm.
and then they eventually hang him and kill him. But that's not the point. The point of showing that is that his idea, his message, what he stood for is bigger than himself. And of course, the character V, that's kind of what he's all about. You know, he
Yeah.
wears literally a mask of Guy Fawkes throughout the entirety of the movie to show that it's one of the classic lines in the movie. It's just like what does he say? Is like people should not be afraid of the government. Government should be afraid of the people. You know that whole thing.
Yeah.
Um, But yeah, I don't know. I was just curious what you knew about that, if you knew anything.
I did not. I did honestly did not know about that. I knew about the mask and that it's sort of it had some significance to past history of like
Yeah.
British revolutionary stuff, but I wasn't sure on the exact history. So that's interesting.
Well, and it
Good to know.
essentially just means like if you see the mask, you're just like it means revolt. It means like, we don't like the man. The government's
Mhm.
bad. Take them out.
Yeah.
And I actually, one thing I had talked about with John when we were recording the episode that will never show up, we talked about how like we weren't sure if the mask was like, like when the replica of Guy Fawkes got made, because like I feel like there's other like, people that are like against the government and all that that have worn the mask and it's been around before, but I don't really know. And I know there's a hacker group. That was the other thing we talked about, is that there's some hacker group that actually wears the
Oh, the Guy
V1.
Fawkes mask now?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And like they, they've put out like they're hackers and they've, stolen people's money or social security numbers or something like that. And they're like, ha ha,
Yeah.
ha, we're terrible.
We're helping guys. We're doing it.
Yeah,
Revolution.
I don't really know, but I do think it's interesting for the movie. And yeah,
It's a
yeah, and
cyclic mask too, I will say. Like he does
it is
look like
cool.
it's sinister mixed with like mysterious, mixed with like a combination of things. Like imagine if it was like a clown mask. Do you think the movie would be any different if it was like a clown mask or
I
like a
don't.
mask of like it was just Bill Murray's face or something like that?
If it was
Do you think
Bill
that would
Murray's
change?
face,
Do you think that would change V for Vendetta at all that much, or do you think it's I think if honestly, it's probably just another layer into the symbolism of the movie as a whole and
yeah,
how it
because there's a
goes
lot of
into
symbolism.
revolution. Yeah,
I don't
because it's not
know.
necessarily that specific regime as a whole. I think they're just talking about more governments as a whole and that being afraid of their people is more important. And like we shouldn't be letting the government just like stomp all over us, kind of thing, you know. So
Yeah, I know the first time I saw the movie, it was an interesting adjustment I just had to make as an audience member, because you're watching a person give a performance and he's being, I would say, largely serious throughout it, but yet his face is behind this mask that's like, eh, and like, like it's smiling. It's kind of goofy. And so, there's parts where he's saying serious things, but then it's behind this smiley face mask. And I just remember like that took me a minute to get used to it, but
yeah.
then like kind of once I got what the movie was going for, like I really got into it.
Yeah,
Um,
I mean, I think it adds to the mystery of it too, because it's really hard to read V's emotions throughout the whole thing and
it's
sort of
true.
like understand his true motives of what's going on, because he just still has always that smile on his face,
Yes.
and like knowing exactly what he's thinking is like because you don't know who he is really either, so it's like
No, and
the
that's
mask
part
is
of.
very.
Go
Yeah, go
ahead.
ahead.
No, you go ahead.
I was just gonna say like the mystery of it really adds to making a very suspenseful movie that's really enjoyable, I think. So.
I'm curious on the subject of dictatorships, because it's impossible for me not to like kind of get into that a little bit.
Oh yeah.
But do you have an idea of just how they come to be?
Dictators.
Yeah, just like
Um,
dictatorships, like how they happen, because I feel like I mean, I want to hear what you think about this, but I can just say for myself, like I'm gonna sound like such a snob here. If I could like, turn my glasses like this, like I'm so smart. But I took a class about genocide when I was in college, actually. It was
really?
just like, yeah, it was just as an elective, and I took it just for a semester, just because I had some time, and I was like, I think it sounds interesting, actually. And they actually really talked a lot in great detail about how genocide becomes something that like a country can buy into, like how it happens, how it gets communicated from a political level,
Hmm.
because it's easy to look at it like now, like in the in the past, or sorry, in the present, and be like, that's ridiculous, I can't believe they ever did that, and blah blah blah. But no, like clearly enough pieces were put together that people were able to buy into doing some pretty horrific things,
Yeah.
in the name of greater good. So
The movement.
it makes me, yeah, it just makes me wonder like how in the hell these things actually come to be. So I don't know, I just wanted to hear what you thought about that.
For dictatorship specifically, like I think there is very much an appeal to having a strong leader, and the strongman tactics of like you've seen it in history before with. I mean, Donald Trump is even a person like that, where you have this guy who's incredibly charismatic and who wants what's best for the people,
Mm-hmm.
you can really like that can take a hold of a society as a whole because like having such strong power like that is usually a bad thing because the people that go in those positions, those strong men that get put in dictatorships, are usually terrible people. And this is a hot take that I have, and let me know what you think of this, Jordan.
I'm
But
ready.
I think democracy as a whole is incredibly inefficient and pretty much a bad idea. And if the better solution would be, right, we have a dictatorship, but this dictator is completely sane and wants the best civilization to come out of it as possible. I think that is the perfect society. Like a perfect society and a perfect government is an overarching figure that wants what's best for the people and wants what's best for everyone. Because then if you just have one sole person running everything, you don't have all these different ideas being thrown together. And that's why
Sure.
things like democracy in the United States of America, we move so slowly when it comes to ideas or political like movements or whatever it may be. Things move so slowly because you have to convince half the population about something.
Sure.
While when you have a dictatorship, things can move like incredibly efficiently and quickly because you just need two or three people to be like, hey, this is a good idea. This will be good for our society. Let's do it.
All right.
So,
Adam, I love hypotheticals, as you
okay.
know. If you've listened to my podcast, I throw hypotheticals around a lot because they're fun and, it's interesting.
Mm-hmm.
So let's say that President Biden,
Yeah.
he gets up in front of the microphone right now, assuming he hasn't fallen asleep or something, and he gets up and he's like, "Hey, America, I'm stepping down as your president, and we're not having democracy anymore. We've decided to make this a dictatorship, and here's our man or woman who is going to be who would do it right now if you just pick somebody out of thin air.
If I had to pick someone,
Yes,
uh, Tom Hanks.
Tom Hanks can do it.
Tom Hanks could do it. I think.
Can his son Chet help him?
I think Chet should have a major role in deciding the America's fate as well. I think he has some
Yeah.
good ideas. I think he understands what's going on more than most of us do. I think people like us make fun of him because we don't truly understand the genius of his mind.
I can definitely say there's a lot about Chet Hanks that I don't understand. I actually really wasn't aware of him for a long time, and I'm sure Tom Hanks would probably prefer that people don't have an awareness of him. Yeah, interesting. But no, I mean, I could joke about the Hanks administration of or dictatorship of the world, but
The
let's
dictatorship of Hanks.
no.
Wait, who would you pick? Who would be your dictator of choice right now if you had to pick someone?
Well, okay. First, I just want to say that I can appreciate some of the things you were saying about dictatorship, but I'm telling you, I don't want a dictatorship. Okay,
Yeah.
I do not. As painful as it is, there are parts of democracy that I would prefer to stay, but
Yeah. I
but
think
I also can appreciate, like I said, what your opinion is about the slow moving nature of democracy, because I do agree. I mean, that's a frustrating part.
a big asterisk in my point is dictate the problem with having a dictatorship is if you have any remote person who is bad, then things go very badly very quickly. But in
Yes.
a democracy, you can have a few bad people, but the system as a whole makes it so that those people can't just power grab everything and then control society, you know.
And I
So
will I
that
will
that is the counterpoint, and that's why I agree. I think we should keep democracy for now, but it's something we should think about for the future if we ever find someone who's an almighty good that we should trust in.
Well, okay. So this was what I was going to ask, and I'm not trying to deflect the question of who I would have, because honestly, like, I don't know.
Okay,
I can't say somebody. Like, would I probably want it to be a politician? Maybe not. I would
you can
maybe
do it
want.
yourself.
I don't think so, because like I don't know. I don't think I'd be qualified for that. But
Yeah.
what I was gonna ask is, I really don't know. I know, like, the what do you call it, the dictators that get a lot of coverage or have: Hitler, Mussolini, Stalin, some of these other figures. But, like, has there ever actually been a time in recorded history where, like, someone looked at a dictator and they're like, they were all right?
I think you could argue there were a few British monarchs that were actually like very good people and wanted what's best for like their
Yeah.
society. I mean, along the same lines, there were ones that were just as bad, like the one that's talked about in this movie. But
Yes. Yeah.
I
I don't
think
think I don't think the one in this movie is good. He's not good.
like there's definitely some like I think monarchies is the easiest way to like see it because usually monarchies are passed down through family lines.
Yeah, because
So there's a lot
that's
less.
not the same as true dictatorship, right? Or
Yeah,
kind in a way, because you're still like it's succession through the bloodline, but yeah,
yeah,
I don't
I would have
know.
to look up the exact term of dictator. When I think dictator, I just think like they control all the government and
Yes.
they are the person we follow. So like absolute monarch, I would consider a dictator, but that could also not be the case. But I think why did like
Yeah.
monarchs usually have a better chance at being like actually good is because they come to power not from violent revolutions. They come to power from just being the son of some guy. And
Yeah.
usually, when they're the son of some guy, they have really good education backgrounds. They know their responsibilities as soon as they're born. Like
Presumably.
you
Yeah.
presumably. I mean, like
Yeah.
these people still go crazy, and especially like when you consider the British monarchy, where there's a lot of incest involved, then things can get a little
Yeah.
haywire for sure.
Well,
But
when I think of that, I always think of the thing where it's like, okay, like say like it's successful for like two generations back to back, like it's just
mm,
working. Like mom or dad, they have a kid, and the kid's like, I want to be like my dad, and they're like, oh, that's great because guess what, you're in a monarchy, so you're gonna be anyway. But what I always wonder then is like, okay, like, but then like, what happens when you have that son or daughter or whoever that is like, I
a
don't want to
complete
do that.
maniac.
I want to be a
Yeah.
dancer. Like I wanna do this. Like I don't want to follow in the family path. It's like, okay, well then what happens? They're forced into it, but then they have no qualifications because they're just dumb. They don't want to do it.
Yeah. I mean that has probably happened a lot through human history as well, of like sons and
But
daughters that are just like, nah, I don't want to do this. Fuck this. But
but that said, sir, I think whether it's dictatorship, monarchy, democracy, any form of government, I don't care. I do not think there has been one that is perfect by any stretch of the imagination. Like I think
definitely
there
not.
are
No.
holes in every single one, and that includes democracy. So I guess I would just conclude that point with just saying that I hope that we can try to be more sensible and work together and listen to each other and all those things that are inspirational and help. Let's help each other, Adam. Don't you want to help your common man or
I would
woman?
I would love to help my common man, you know.
Yeah,
We got to work together, you know. We got to make sure we're brothers and sisters, you know, and everything like that.
I feel inspired. That's great. um, okay, I wanted to ask you on the subject of V,
uh-huh.
Mr. V, right?
Oh yeah.
So they talk about it in the movie, and I think they kind of try to make you question it as an audience member. They're like, well, is he a terrorist? Is he a freedom fighter? Is that one and the same? How did you view the character V? I mean, like, did you see him as purely someone that's just a noble person doing the right thing, or did you be like, this guy is basically a terrorist? And yeah,
I would hope people would get from the movie that he's a complicated character, and while he might have good intentions, like he's definitely not perfect, right? Like I think honestly, okay, I will say that that might be a critique of the movie at times though, because I think they definitely romanticize and make him sort of a hero, which he
sure,
very much is. But a lot of these revolutions and a lot of these people who form these revolutions are not usually great people, and they're usually like
yeah,
they're the morality of the situation is really hard to judge on whether like this is the right move and whether this is like whether we should be maybe killing these people who maybe might have been innocent civilians for the greater good of stopping the tyrannical government, you know, like it's really tough to say whether he was a good hero or whether he was a terrible person, and I think that's the way it should be because that's the way revolutions have gone through in history of
mm-hmm.
this moral gray area of like, well, we probably should have stopped this, but like also the people who are stopping this are also not great people either, you know.
I think the movie handles that balance, the balancing of that question pretty well, because I do think that you ultimately root for V, I would say, as an audience member, because you're like, yeah, this government sucks.
Yeah, it's
Chancellor
pretty
Sutler is
bad.
pretty terrible. There's curfews, there's audio and video surveillance. This is not really that great. Like there's those fingermen, the people that try to rape you in the street. It's some pretty heavy stuff, some not good things. So it's good to see somebody like this come up and be like, no, like enough is enough. I'm gonna help people and blah blah blah. But then they do openly at times kind of question it, and Natalie Portman I think kind of serves as the audience eyes for that, because she at one point is like, okay, like you killed him, you admitted to killing this person, you know, who's like part of the party, and he's like, yeah, I absolutely murdered him. And that, you know, I think yeah, like the movie not pokes holes, but it definitely shows the flaws of him, in that he may be idealistic and he may have noble intentions with it, and he's articulate and well versed, but he is doing some things that are extreme and maybe didn't need to be done. I don't know if he necessarily needed to go through, you know, outside of his selfish motivations, to murder all those people that had done him wrong in the past. You know, he probably still could have accomplished his goal of blowing up Parliament and uniting people without having to murder those other people. And that also goes with the whole, you know, subplot in it where this is a spoiler, but you know, he tortures Natalie Portman. You know, he does that whole thing to rid her of fear. But I'm like, you know, you maybe could have just like talked to her a little bit instead of, you know, waterboarding her and shaving her head and making her eat crap in a box and like other pretty horrific things. So I mean, like I think the movie shows that yeah, he's definitely not perfect. He is doing some things that likely shouldn't be done, but then at the same time, sometimes I would argue that extreme action is needed to make change happen. Like otherwise, how would some of these things move? You know? So yeah, I don't know. It's interesting to think about that. I was also curious. Could you do some of those complicated monologues that he does with the letter V? Because you know, there's that one part where he's like, blah, 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 blah. Like he just says,
he
like,
just keeps saying
15
victorious vocation of valiant forecast. I don't know. Yeah, he says. Honestly, that's a tough word. That's a tough letter specifically to do something like that with. Like
I had no idea there were that many uses of it.
Yeah, that's a pretty niche letter specifically. So that props to him for being able to do that. And that's why I think he should be our true dictator here, because this man knows how to use his language.
Yeah, do you want V to be the dictator, or you want to hire Hugo Weaving? Like we're just gonna be like, hey, we liked you as Elron and Mr. Smith and V. We think you have what it takes.
We think you have what it takes, Hugo. I mean, with a name like Hugo, come on. Like that's a dictator name right there.
I will say, on just the subject of his performance, I think he gives a really good performance. And I do think that it's a big challenge for an actor to do, because you literally don't see his face. There are some exceptions though. Like if you actually pay close attention, especially during the torture sequence, the lighting is dimmed in such a way that you can see it's Hugo Weaving without the mask if you look just right, but he's still, you know, 99% hidden throughout the whole movie. So you're not having to see his face. So he's 100% reliant on his physicality and the way he moves. And then of course his voice. And I don't know enough about Hugo Weaving to say this for sure, but I do think he is a classically trained actor. Like I think he does have theater background, because his performance, you know, the character is very Shakespearean in a way. You know, he's very grandiose with his ideas. He has these big long monologues. He's a very well-spoken person. So I definitely think, as far as an acting job would go, it's a pretty hard one for someone to pull off, but I think he does a good job. So
yeah, agreed.
That's what I would have to say about that. So what about Natalie Portman? Did you like her?
Natalie Portman as an actor, I am not the biggest fan of. In this movie, she was fine, but I find she's not very good at emotions and acting. Is my one problem with Natalie Portman. Honestly, like Interstellar too. Interstellar, I wasn't like the biggest fan of her. She was
No,
one of
she's
the.
not. She's not in Interstellar. That's Anne
Wait, who am I?
Hathaway. That's Anne Hathaway.
Oh, maybe I'm thinking Anne Hathaway, dude. I haven't
I
seen this
don't know.
movie in so long. I apologize.
It's okay. It's
Oh
okay.
my god. Well, what do you think of Natalie Portman?
Well, I mean, I really like her as an actor. I think she has pretty incredible range, and I would say as far as her emotional side that that she shares, she has to go to some pretty extreme places in this movie. Like she's having panic attacks, she's having like nervous breakdowns, she's bawling, she's being tortured. Um, she has to cry, you know, a couple of different times and pivotal times in this movie. And I'm always actually really fascinated with how an actor is able to get to that place on camera and have it be so raw and believable, and they're just burying their soul for like just kind of everybody to see. I mean, that's acting to me sometimes done at its finest. And I'm not saying that Natalie Portman deserved an Oscar for this movie. It's not that type of thing. But
Uh-huh.
no, I mean, I really think like she went for it. I mean, her accent I also think was pretty good from what I can tell for British accents. She's
Yeah, I
not
guess she's
British.
not she's not British, right? She's like one of the only people not British in this film.
Yeah, she's not British at all. And I mean, dude, she literally shaved her head for the role.
Dude,
And they legit did that. And I
that's
think again,
impressive.
like that's just it shows commitment to a performance. And I think if the role is right and it helps, I think actors should kind of take those lengths to do that. And so, anyways, no, I would say I really liked her. Um,
Dude.
I really liked her in this movie, and yeah, I mean, I think she breaks your heart in a couple of scenes because yeah, she goes through a lot in the movie. So I'll just say that
That makes
it's pretty
sense.
extreme.
I guess
Um,
I can't comment because I mixed her up with Anne Hathaway, but I will say I don't like Anne Hathaway very much, and I am gonna keep to my point of she was bad in Interstellar.
well,
But
okay,
now
well,
I'm looking at Natalie Portman's IMDb right now, and she has done some really good movies. Like,
Black
have you seen
Swan.
Black Swan? Have you seen Annihilation? That's a really good movie.
Yes, I have. I
Annihilation is
own
really
that.
good.
I need to get the
Uh,
4K of that. But yes, we should do a podcast on that sometime because there is some really big ideas and concepts in that movie.
I would love to talk about that movie because honestly, nobody has seen that movie either, really.
I've seen that movie
So,
a
well,
couple
I mean,
times.
Jordan, you've seen every movie. I feel like so
I,
it's
I
like,
see
but
it.
like
I do see a lot.
I feel like not a lot of people have seen that movie. We should talk about that when we have that podcast at some point.
Okay,
We
but
need to,
I can't help myself. I want to talk about one thing on Annihilation quick. Just a really quick sidetrack. It'll be
okay.
a minute, just a minute or less.
Okay.
Now, I don't know how fresh the movie is in your mind, but one of the most eerie, clever, original sequences that I've seen in the movie in recent years, and I'm not just saying a sci-fi movie, I just mean like it's clever. I
Yeah.
guess maybe it is a sci-fi movie. This would be a thing.
hmm
That that creature that's like the bone bear, but that screams out in human voices. Do you know what I'm talking about?
The Bone Bear.
Yeah, because there's this bear that's in the movie, and like it's attacking them at one
Oh
point.
yeah,
But it,
and
it,
like
it
it has the
tricks people. It
voices.
tricks people to come help it because it's like when it goes instead of that, it's like like you hear people like actually cry out and help, and it's super super uncomfortable.
Yeah, that's well. I think isn't it the voices of like things
It's
that's
the
killed already
Yeah,
too?
like it's actual
Yeah.
people. It's not just like
God, dude,
it's heavy. It's
that movie
really
is
heavy.
intense. That movie is very intense. Honestly, very good movie.
It's yeah, okay, I'll hold you to it. At some point in the future, we will talk about Annihilation because it's well worth it. And yes, quick plug. If you haven't seen Annihilation, it's it's very well worth it.
It's like one of my favorite sci-fi movies. I would think
Yeah,
it's like
I was very impressed.
it incorporates a lot of like really good parts of sci-fi together, and it just works seamlessly. I think so. Great
Well, you
movie.
know what else works seamlessly? This
Hmm.
transition. No, Adam, I'm curious.
Mhm.
It seems like you're not really down with the government always. I'm not saying that you're a part of a group, you're a part of a coalition, you do
Yeah,
things in the streets. I don't really know what you do, but
I'm a
if you're
revolutionary. What can I say?
well, okay, if you're a revolutionary, let me ask you this. If
Mhm.
you're fighting against the man You're gonna fight against government. I mean, what do you think is an effective way to do that, or do you think there's an effective way? You know, like protesting or rioting, or like what would you say?
An effective way to stick it to the man.
Sure, if you
I
want to, if that's your point, that's your point.
I think a very effective way to do that in the United States specifically is my spending habits.
Okay,
I would say things like boycotting are probably the most effective way to dissuade like American governments from doing things. Money kind of runs everything in the United States, and I think that's probably the best way to make my voice heard other than just say some things on the street. Like I understand the point of protesting, and I really think it does have its
sure,
like ups and downs, but like things like boycotting and like using your wealth and using your like people power with that wealth is really where I think you could see change personally. How about you, Jordan? What would you think
Mm,
is the best way to stick to the man?
it's a tough one because there's a lot.
Eco-terrorism?
What? I'll make this clear. Make this clear for the listening audience. I do not condone doing acts of terrorism. I just want to make that very clear.
I would agree with that
No,
statement. Yeah.
I would not say that's an effective thing. Now, I would say that there are some ways that are effective against going against control or the government. Some more so than others. I would say like on a local level, and I do mean this, but like on a local level, a lot more people could stand to like vote in their local elections, whether it's for like city council or mayor or anything
Hmm.
like that. There could always be more of a turnout and awareness on that. And so you could always put your voice there. And that if you do it right could help. Otherwise, they say sometimes like if you like actually take the time to like write a handwritten like plea to like the governor of your state or something like that, that perhaps if you do it enough times, like think of like Andy Dufresne and like Shawshank Redemption, where he's just like, I'm gonna write a letter once a week for like 20 years and then I'll get $500 for my library.
Yeah.
Um, you know, something like that. So I mean, sometimes like just persistence on that level could help.
Hmm.
Um, but other than that, I mean, I would say that you're onto something when it comes to like, monetarily wise, like with money, like what you choose to like put your money where your mouth is, as they say, like where you're choosing to spend your money.
Hmm.
It's like people that choose to support local business over corporation. In
Yeah.
a way, like that's kind of a we're fighting against big tech and like big companies. We
Yeah.
don't want to
Very
support
effective way to do
them.
it. Yeah.
You get enough people to do that, that can help. But no, honestly, what I think a lot of it is like if you really want to fight, if you really want to fight against the control, I think it's just done on a social level. It's just how you're networking, the people if
Hmm.
you're in a position of influence or if you are under, you have people under you. Um, I don't know. I mean, I think effective leaders they do things like that all the time to fight against control by how their powers of persuasion, the way they're able to
Yeah.
talk to people. So
Hmm.
sometimes like that. And I guess the only other thing I would say, like just on the subject of protesting, because like you see it, I don't think a lot of them are that effective though. I mean, honestly, I see sometimes like I remember like Alliant Energy here.
Uh-huh.
Alliant Energy here in Cedar Rapids, they had put out this thing of saying that like we're going to be jacking up your electric bill for like the next like 5 to 10 years or something for investments into like clean energy or something.
Uh-huh.
They said something like that, and I think like there was like maybe like 10 or 15 people that showed up outside of Alliant Energy with like some picket signs, and they're like, we're pissed, we're not
Yeah.
happy about this, and it got
Uh-huh.
some local news coverage, and then really I think nothing happened with it.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
It's tough, dude. Yeah. Here's a good question I have for you, Jordan. Kind of slight tangent, but not complete tangent.
It's okay.
This is a nice hypothetical I love to give to my friends every once in a while to kind of gauge where you are, like where do you stand on like how much do you care about your life? Because like let's say hypothetically speaking, there's an alien race that comes to Earth and they want to kill us all. Would you be on the front line and die for humanity to try to save the lives of humans as a whole?
That's
Would
just
you
the
say you would do
question.
that?
Like, am
Yeah,
I?
that's the first part of this question. Would you say you would do that?
Now, I'm not trying to like overthink it, but like, is this like I'm joining the army? Like, I'm just
Yeah.
like I'm gonna go on the
Hmm.
front lines and like that's my first response to like fight it.
Yes. Hmm.
Um, I guess I would say off the top, if it's very clear that the threat is like really dire and the aliens that are there are using force, like that's like their very first response. Like they're not talking to our president, they're not coming down. Like you can just clearly see they are here to kill people.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would like to think that I would probably put aside whatever I'm doing and be like, okay, like I think I might need the help.
Hmm.
I'm
No, that
not.
makes
I've
sense.
never been in the military or anything like that. But if the threat was severe enough and the it was grave enough,
Hmm.
I would like to think that I would forget about my own problems and do it. Sure.
Oh yeah. Would you do the same for something like China? Let's say China tried to invade the United States, and we want the United States to be the United States of China.
So
Would you die for your country then, or would you be like, let's give this
like
whole China thing a shot?
we're going to invade China. Is that
No, they're invading us. They're
okay? They're
invading
invading
us.
us, so China's coming over here,
Yeah.
and kind of similar deal.
Yeah. Similar deal. Yeah.
Hmm. That's a tougher one because, and I'll say it's a tougher one because one, it's a human,
Hmm.
so like an alien, like you can kind of separate it a bit because you're just
Yeah.
like they're not people, they're
They're
monsters,
pigs.
like
Yeah.
they're like I mean, who knows, like let's say like they're like the Independence Day creatures where like they're just like
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
my
Yeah. They're
alien
like
noise.
octopuses, whatever. Yeah.
Dude, octopus is so scary.
Yeah.
um no, they this is a good question though, because yeah, when it comes to like the wars with like actual countries and whatnot, it's really tough because I don't think war is really the most effective means of doing things. I mean, like especially like mass battles and fighting people and things like that.
Hmm.
I mean, it might make for a good movie or
Yeah.
make for some dramatic tensions and stuff, but it's ultimately wasteful, resources and people, and we could be doing more productive things with our time than killing each other.
Yeah.
So I guess this is what I would kind of attribute this to, Adam, is like if it was the China thing, well, like the last war where it was like almost like just complete people being on the same page of like the threat is, it's World War II.
Hmm.
Like that's one where like everybody, like you had all these countries that are like, okay, these people are tyrannical. They just want to wipe out everything and dominate, like
Yeah.
just dominate,
Yeah.
right?
It's like, okay, yeah. I could see I would honestly probably fight to like defeat Hitler. Like that would be something
Yeah.
I would probably honestly do.
But what I'm
It's
saying
like,
is like in the case of China, it's like I would have to feel pretty strongly that what they are representing and what they are doing and long term, and it's very clear, like they have stuff that is going to have an overarching negative effect on humanity. I
mhm.
would I would need to feel that kind of a strong pull to like be able to be like, yeah, I'm gonna go and fight
Die for
against
this. Yeah.
China.
Uh-huh.
But I don't know, because I say that because I do think our country. I'm not trying to make this political, but this is V for Vendetta, so it's only natural.
Yeah.
I think our country's been a part of conflicts and wars that we absolutely didn't need to do, and
No, yeah, definitely.
people died for no reason.
No, yeah. Something like Vietnam is so sad because it's really just like it was ideological driven. And like there were so many things that went into it. I understand why it happened, but it's
Yeah.
still like, damn, like all these people died for like literally no reason at all. And it's so sad to see. And like
Well,
that's one of the things I think that really has kind of dissuaded like a lot of my friends and like people that I know, like nobody that I know is like, yeah, yeah. And China, like we see the Chinese government do some pretty terrible things to people,
yeah,
but I'm still like, I don't know if that's a good idea, even if they're invading us, because I see like I can see TikToks of people from China doing completely normal things that I do. And these are all normal people just as much as we are. And things like social media and like increasing communication with people around the world and globalization
sure.
has really led to getting rid of this whole like tribalism around this is these people from a different country, they're animals, they're fanatics, they're the
Right.
worst. Like
Yeah, us
that whole
against them
mentality,
kind of thing.
that whole
Yeah.
mentality is almost pretty much gone at this point, which makes it so I think wars like that probably aren't ever really going to happen again. Like
Yeah.
things, we'll see it in different ways, but we won't really see it as me with a gun against a guy on the other side of the battlefield also with a gun, just because the internet's kind of changed things because of that,
You
and
know, and
for the better, very
yeah.
much so. But
Well, that's what I was going to comment on, because that's an interesting way of putting it, is that the state of connection that we have with technology and social media has, arguably made people that ordinarily might not connect from such a far distance be able to connect with much greater ease. And
mhm.
so, despite all the problems that social media and big tech has with, Big Brother stuff, they watch everything we do, and apparently Facebook is now going to be the Matrix. I don't really know. There's all these different things, but yeah, I mean, it's kind of a nice positive silver lining to be like, people have a greater sense of awareness of other countries' issues than ever had before, and would probably think twice about being like, let's just get all of our troops and land on the beach and take them out.
Yeah,
It's a different way of thinking now, and I would argue, like you said, I would argue that it's for the better.
yeah.
Honestly, I wouldn't want stuff like that to happen. I don't think those big wars need to happen. So
No, they really don't. So
yeah, but it's interesting. I guess, what do you said you asked this question to some of your friends. I mean, like, do you get a lot of them that are like, nah, like, let's just go to war?
no, I don't. I don't really know anyone that has that like
Yeah,
opinion these days. Like it's and maybe it's because the people I hang out with have like similar mindsets that I do. Like you kind of just hang out with the people that like have the same values you have. But
progressive, Adam. Is that what
I
you
mean,
are? Are you a progressive? Is
uh,
that a thing?
I don't know. Like you got to define that. Like I think just giving me and giving you a label of something
Mm-hmm.
is pretty disingenuous. And
Sure.
I think it kind of defeats the purpose of like being able to have these conversations and flesh things out, because everything's so much more complicated than just one specific ideology and just running full steam down that ideology, whatever it may be. Like
Well, would
I
you
think
say that you have any friends that are, as they say in terms of politics, like on the opposite side of the aisle? They're across the aisle. Like, do you have people that that, like, they could not disagree with you more on what you think about things?
I I don't think so, honestly. Because I don't know. I tend to see like advantages to both sides of the aisle, whatever if you're like a leftist or whether you're
Right.
like a pretty hard conservative. Like I think there's advantages to both of those. And I think if you strongly go one way or the other, I find that to be a little bit of a red flag, because it means you're not really open to change in your ideas, and you're not open to like talk about why like the other side sees things this way and this side sees things this way. Like I think it's important
Mm-hmm.
to be like, well, there's a reason people see things this way, and we should talk about like that issue specifically, like I don't know.
Yeah.
I find extremists in a political belief, that is the other side of the aisle for me. I find that to be like an issue more so than like any specific side, no matter what it is. Because I think a lot of political ideologies and like thinking as a whole, they come from good ideas. A lot of them do, and a lot of people, because a lot of people follow them and they see the advantage to these sorts of things. But I think everything has its trade-off at the same time, and just like going hard down one political ideology is usually not the way to go.
I
But what's your
usually,
take, Jordan?
well, I just think when it comes to like communicating politics, because I'm a very big person just on the subject of communication in general. I
Mhm.
really think there's a lot of work that we still need to do as people to better communicate complex ideas and theories to one another without subjecting them to our, emotional perspectives on the issue, like us getting I guess what I'm trying to say on this is that it's really, I think, tough for a lot of people to separate personal feelings and emotional connection to something they're talking about versus just, kind of like how Ben Shapiro is. He's just like, facts don't care about your feelings, and
Yeah.
yeah, blah, 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 blah. He talks
Yeah,
he,
yeah,
talk,
yeah, 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 yeah.
he talks very fast.
He does. Yeah.
But he does have, I would say that if I'm for some reason gonna talk about Ben Shapiro real quick, I would say that he has a point in talking about that separation of the two. But that said, um, I don't know. I get where people like that can come from, where you're like, just totally remove your feelings from it and just focus
Mhm.
on facts. But sometimes that's easier said than done. And sometimes, there's like the moral argument towards things, and that's something that's directly rooted in a feeling.
Yeah.
It's hard to sometimes take away the humanity out of something when you're talking about it with someone. So this is what I would say on this to kind of wrap up my rambling on this point, is that I think, like, let's say like you, Adam, let's say
Mhm.
you are, I don't know, you hardcore are on the conservative side. Like, you're like,
Okay.
I super love Trump.
Donnie Trump.
And yeah,
Yeah.
you're like, Donnie's my guy. I like him a
Hmm.
lot. He's great. And I'm
Yeah.
like, well, I love Biden, and he's the
Hmm.
best, and Trump's Hitler, and he's horrible.
Yeah.
I think the biggest thing that we can do for each other on this is to still talk about it with each other, but still keep respect as the mutual undercurrent throughout the entirety of the conversation. So, like, for example, if I start the conversation by right away belittling this guy that you clearly support and like,
Hmm.
and I'm like, just like kind of being very naive about it. I'm just like, he's an orange haired oompa loompa crazy person. He's a shithead. And
Yeah.
I just kind of start going off on a tirade. Well, you're going to get defensive right off the bat. You're going
Yeah.
to get defensive right off the bat because I'm just trying to go for the low blows
Uh-huh.
because it's fun.
I'm trying to
Or
hit you with a gotcha kind of
yeah,
thing.
I'm
Yeah.
trying to just do this, and like none of it's meant to respect what you think about it. It's just
Hmm.
like, I'm right, you're wrong, and your opinion is not only wrong, but it's stupid.
Yeah.
And it's like, if I'm already starting off conversation like that, how am I going to be able to expect any type of a productive resolve to the whole
Hmm.
thing? It's like that
Yeah.
whole thing. It's like you have to ask yourself before certain conversations what you want the end result to be. And when it
Hmm.
comes to politics, I would just say I ultimately just want the end result for whatever the situation to be is to just have a mutual sense of understanding so that I can walk away from it being like, okay, I get exactly why this person feels this way, and I still respect them. I don't know. I
Yeah.
I just think there's a lot of that gets lost when it comes on this stuff. And people get, it hurts people's feelings. Friendships are lost, families get divided. It sucks.
It does. It really does, honestly. And always the best mindset to have that I find is that at the end of the day, morally speaking, we all want the same thing.
Yeah,
Like
we
we
have a
all
lot
want,
more in common than what then separates us. I still think even like the most divisive of people on both sides could agree on that.
yeah, we all want what's best for everyone. At the end of the day, like we want the best systems, we want what's best, and that's how it goes. And there's a difference in how we get to that point. And I don't think we should hate each other because of that, you know. And like I always assume that the person you're talking to like has the same sort of endpoint that you want to, where is best for everyone, and there's just a misunderstanding in how to get there. And like being able to understand their points and why they want things to go a specific way is a lot more constructive of an argument than just yelling at the person and telling them they're stupid for having their ideas and they're
Yeah.
brainwashed and they don't understand what's going on. Like
Yeah.
I don't
I
know.
Well, I would also say, when it comes to just talking about the stuff, the biggest thing that I run into is that, and I say this for a lot of different subjects, it's not just politics. A lot of these things are complicated to talk about. There's nuances to them. There's data that you have to research, especially if you're talking about like a health related issue, which seems to come up all the time now, whether it's vaccinations or the COVID virus. Like, there's all this complicated data behind
Mhm.
it. And so my point behind this is that between the complexities of the data or whatever the problem is and all the different facets of it, it takes a lot of time sometimes to really unpack these things in a meaningful way. And I just find a lot of people don't have the time.
Yeah.
I don't think a lot of us do, which is why a lot of us, they turn to Twitter and we just throw out a quick comment and we move on with our day. We don't really care. It's just like,
Yeah.
whatever. I don't have time to get into all that with you.
Hmm. Yeah.
Too
No,
much.
it's too much, dude. I wish we could all get along, but I guess that's not the way things work, is it? So
I would say, like, when it comes to like just disagreeing with someone on something, especially if, political thing, um I'll actually share a bit of a personal thing right now. So I have some family, and everybody could probably say this, but I have some family that has some political ideologies on things, or they have some viewpoints on things that I could not disagree with more,
Yeah.
right?
Hmm.
But that said, and this is, I suppose this is a tricky balance for some people to strike, is like, even, and I'm not going to name these people, but even if I don't agree on some of these things on just a fundamental human level,
Hmm.
I don't love them any less.
No.
I still care for them. I still like them a lot. I like to
Yeah.
see them and talk with them, and of course it helps that they're biologically related, that they're family.
Hmm.
But I don't know. I mean, like, some of the things, like, even if I don't agree with it, is it hurting me? Is it really truly like hurting my environment or my circumstance or my community that they don't see the same way that I see on something?
Yeah.
I personally think on certain issues, no. But then others people would argue, well, that they aren't being safe on something, or, it is affecting people. So I don't know. Like, you're going to be subjective on that, but I don't know. I guess I would just say that, some of my family, I don't agree with a lot of the things that they believe in, but they are allowed to have those opinions and thoughts, and I'm not going to make them feel less,
Yeah.
especially like if they've done as much research on the subject as I have, and that's what they choose to do. Then I don't know, I feel like they should be allowed to do what they need to do if that's what they believe in,
No. Yeah.
as long as it's not physically harming somebody. It's like those 10 commandments thing. If I had the tablets here, thou shalt not
Hmm.
murder, thou shalt not steal, like some of those basic human fundamentals, like,
Hmm.
okay, I don't know. Maybe that doesn't make sense.
No, it makes sense to me, man.
I got one more point that I want to say on V for Vendetta. There's a couple other points I could do, but I don't want to take up too much more of our time on here, because you've been so kind to just randomly do this
Yeah, of course, man.
unplanned.
No, yeah.
Um, I wanted to talk about Chancellor Sutler, John Hurt,
Okay.
because and I don't know if you draw this comparison when you watch the movie. And again, it's been a minute since you've seen it, but you should recall that 90% of his presence in the movie is on a screen, right?
No, yeah, because it's on the TV usually.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he's on the TV. He's either in like that private boardroom, where the government people are there, or he's talking to the people on television, but he's on a screen. And
Hmm.
I think that's very intentionally done, because I think it's trying to say something about the media. And
Oh.
yeah, I'm sorry, man. I have to do it. I have to do it because
Fake news.
well, it's an interesting thing, because now I would say in this movie, and we've already addressed this, it's extreme. It's heightened reality.
Hmm.
They openly show that the government has bought and paid for, big news. Like, they're just like, yeah, we control it. We control the
Yeah.
narrative. We put out fake stories. We don't care.
Hmm.
I'm not trying to say any message about that. I'm just talking about strictly from the movie. But
Yeah.
what I find interesting is seeing John Hurt's political character through a screen, and, like, what does that say about seeing somebody conveying something, but we're not really seeing it directly with our own eyes? Like, we're constantly just viewing them through um something that we're removed from, like it's on a
Hmm.
screen, like, where there's not that personal connection there. And I
Yeah.
don't know, I just kind of wonder about, like, what does that say about how we process like political information on the news? Like, are we always just buying it like right away? Like, when we see it, we're just like, oh yeah, I believe it, like 100%. Is it right to
Hmm.
question it? Like, that kind of thing. I just wanted to hear what you thought. Not trying to say a statement
Yeah.
about fake news. not
Mm.
not doing that.
I it's a tough line to draw because part of me sort of likes the fact that Donald Trump made us all criticize like information and media more. But also I think there's a line with it. It's like how far do you criticize institutions that we have? And like
Yeah.
how far down the like I'm not trusting any sort of fact that goes against my initial judgment. And that's the path you go down if you just keep believing that whatever you're given is fake and whatever this isn't real and this is just paid for by the government. So it's such a hard line to determine of like, okay, which of this stuff is actually real, which
Yeah.
stuff isn't real, what should I follow, what should I not follow.
I
And
Sorry, go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
Well,
I lost.
I was just gonna say because there is a lot of nuance to this subject in particular, but I'll just say just to touch on the movie, and then I'll talk about the real thoughts I have. I think the movie, I mean, it's doing the job well because I'm thinking about it years later, thinking about that imagery and how it affected me, and what it says about trusting your government through whatever they're telling you, because it's an important question. It's
Yeah.
an important question, and I do think that when it comes to like applying it to a real world scenario, there's a couple of things I think. So one, I think anything that gets directly reported like from the government, like whether it's like the White House or here's like an official government press thing,
Mm.
I think the citizens of that country have every right to question every word that comes out of it. You
Yeah.
know, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think that's part of what the country is built on is people not just blindly believing everything.
Mm.
I think there should be a healthy level of skepticism and questioning to go along when it's reported directly from there. Now, that said, the trickier part comes in when you're looking at, you know, the actual sources of journalism, CNN or Fox News or MSNBC or BBC or all these different organizations. That's to me where it's harder to kind of discern because, and I'll sound like an old man on this, but they used to just report the news. They used like I had Walter Cronkite on there that would just say, this happened and I don't have any thoughts about it. Like I'm
I
not.
think
Sorry, go
I
ahead.
think I think most sane people will agree though that if there's any like 24-hour news network out there, that it's all for entertainment and money. It has nothing to do with anything
Yes, and
else.
that's
Things
where
like
I and
CNN and Fox News and those places are 24-hour news cycle
yes,
businesses that like need clicks and need money, and they have 24 hours in a day to fill.
yes,
So like it's not all going to be true, and taking any of that as fact is just disingenuous and wrong and bad.
and that's kind of what I was gonna get at is that's where a lot of the state of like what do you trust with information kind of comes from because like you said, a lot of these places they can't just be viewed as solely a news source. It's
Mhm.
entertainment.
Yeah.
All these different organizations have countless different like opinion panels and columns and all these different things meant to, like you said, get clicks, just drum up advertisement, drum up awareness and, views and that sort of thing. And
Yeah.
so, yeah, I mean, I would say that's where it's a lot harder right now when it comes to what I see through a screen is because so much of it that I see now, and I understand why Trump brought it up. Um, so much of it, it's like you'll see like a fact about something get reported, and that'll take like 30 seconds, and then the bulk of the coverage is just talked about what a person thinks of it. And
Uh-huh.
so then like you're not really focusing so much on like what is being reported. You're focusing on like the viewpoint of it all. Like what does it all mean? You
Yeah.
know? And I don't know. I think a lot of people have every right to be frustrated with that. But at the same time, I'm not going to go as hardcore as what like Trump was saying, where he's like, oh, it's fake. I saw CNN. I hate them. I hate them. Everything that they say is terrible. It's all terrible. Did you know it's terrible? CNN is terrible. Like there because when you go like that kind of like just blanket generality and like you just spread it across and like you just keep saying it over and over and over again, well then you're undermining credible journalism. You're
Mhm.
undermining people that are doing that hard work and getting that information for you to actually discern and make your own decision on by just constantly putting that message out there of like everything that comes from news is awful. So I don't know. I thought, and there's some rambling I have on that. I'm not saying I have the solution, but I can sure as hell see the problem. That's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, it's a serious problem, and I I personally don't see the solution, but I think an important solution is to recognize that news media and everything you have is bias, and but it is also important to not just like completely go against everything and then follow your own intuition. So you gotta realize that both of those problems exist and then try to draw the line for yourself as best you can.
I
Because
want to
like there's
say,
go
sorry,
ahead.
I'm sorry. Like I got to say two things.
Mhm.
So one, One, I would say that oh my gosh, I kind of drawing a blank. What were you just saying? What were you just saying? I don't want to lose this.
I was saying the two big points are you should understand that news is bias and that you should be skeptical of everything you have, but being skeptical of everything you have also leads to the issue of not trusting any sort of intuition or fact. And those are two both levels you have to kind of like,
Yes.
tread the line with.
Yeah, I remember part of what I was going to say. One, and this does tie to the movie because I think it has a central question that the movie's honestly asking, and like it makes you question it and applies it to the modern day news. But I want to talk about the detectives. So if you recall, the main detective, one of the Stephen
Fry?
Ray. No, Stephen Fry's the heavier set gentleman.
Oh yeah.
It's Stephen Ray.
Okay.
Anyways, it doesn't matter. It kind of does, but so Stephen Ray, if you recall, he's a pretty sort of submissive person at the start of the movie. You know, he's been a party member, as he says, for like over 20 years. You can just kind of tell that like his spirit's broken and that he's just like, yep, this is just kind of how it is. I work for the government.
Yeah.
They you know, it's a dictatorship, but
Mhm.
well, I'm still a cop and I'm trying to do my job, and that's that. But over the course of the movie, you know, he uncovers a conspiracy. You know, he sees that, you know, Three Waters and all these different incidents that happened that led to the rise of Chancellor Sutler with there being biological contaminants in the water was actually done by the government. You know, that's what
Mhm.
he uncovers. So a
Yeah.
little bit of a spoiler, but the thing I think that's interesting about that whole subplot and how it kind of ties ethically into the subject of journalism is like, what if you are a journalist that is covering something and you're just digging up information? You're just purely trying to put the pieces together just to understand what happened. But then you uncover something that is horrific. And on a human level, you get conflicted where you're like, okay, how on earth do I talk about this objectively without throwing like an opinion of like these people are bastards for lying to us
Yeah.
and doing this? And I actually found that very interesting that the detective was very conflicted of that throughout too, is that, you know, he's just trying to put the facts together, but he can't help himself from feeling morally torn about what he's finding out. And
Yeah.
I bet my bottom dollar that when it comes to real authentic news journalism, that type of ethical struggle probably happens often. And I don't know if there is a perfect way to just totally remove yourself from something. And like I said, it's just removing that humanity from when you're reporting on something. It's very tough because people instinctually want to know how you feel about it.
Yeah. And I think it is a tough thing to do, but I think a lot of journalists probably deal with things like that every day. And
Sure.
I mean, like at the end of the day, they'll probably take their own biases into account because, like, I mean, my beliefs and everything that I do come from my own biases. So it's like
Right.
I shouldn't necessarily expect them to be any different than I am. But there's a line with that too of like if the facts go against your like initial intuitions or your ideas so much, then it's probably maybe it's best to be okay with changing your mindset on things. I think is an important thing that, or is an important mindset that journalists should specifically have as well, because
Yeah.
like sometimes the facts don't necessarily go like for the story that you're looking to weave and the ideas that you're looking to build off of.
Yeah. The narrative.
The narrative, yeah,
Ah,
like
you
things
know.
things things don't necessarily go that way. I think it's important to like own up to the fact that your narrative didn't go the way you wanted it to
Sure.
with whatever you're reporting at the end of the day, and being
Well, and
able
that,
to
sorry,
change
go
that
ahead.
is very important. I was finishing that point. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to add on to that that's a very important ethical standard when it comes to, I think, real good journalism. That's probably improper English. It's really good. Um, just real high standard, like real high quality journalism. I think they have to establish right from the get go that there should never ever be a pre drawn up or pre approved narrative that you're wanting to tell.
There
Like
is always there is always one. That was the thing.
I know, and that's the thing. It's like I don't know if there's a perfect way to do it. Other than that, I would just say when it comes to real journalism, the people that are doing it, I think there needs to be such a high, like a ridiculously high standard of ethical practices to follow to do that profession. But then at the same time, you need proper checks and balances to make sure that that's being followed. And so my only answer to that is that I really just think that it just takes the right morally sound people that can't be bullshitted and can't be bought. And that also, but then at the same time, I think you also have to look at the overall structure of these companies because, like you said, they're entertainment primarily, first and foremost, whether they want to admit that or not. And the whole profit structure behind those places is, to me, certainly kind of out of whack because if people's primary motivation to report something is just financial incentive, well, then they're going to misconstrue things all the time if they think it's going to get them paid. So I don't know. Maybe there's no answer. Don't believe anything you hear. Just go to YouTube. You muted yourself. You're muted again. Oh, you're still muted.
I am muted. Oh my gosh. But be careful about not believing everything you hear.
Yeah, I would just
because then that leads to just the only thing you're going off of is your own intuition, which can be construed very easily and go down rabbit holes you don't want to go down.
Yeah. And that's the last point. That's the last point that I will say on that subject is I'm going to mention Trump really quick because, and I promise I'm trying to be as like neutral on this as I can, but there is a deep reason that Trump gained a lot of popularity by being very vocal against some mainstream media outlets because these problems were happening long before him. And I think he just was one of the first people that kind of went against the grain. And
I don't know if I would say the first, but he did a very good job at it.
I mean, like you said, he is a very persuasive, very, the guy has presence about him when he talks.
He's very good at being Donald Trump. He's very good at being Donald Trump.
Yeah, that's a good way of saying it. He's very good at being Donald Trump. But I'm just saying that for all the heartache and division that some of that has caused, I don't hate him for bringing it up because I think it has caused people to take a much harder look at that issue as a whole and certainly makes people be more aware that it was an issue to begin with.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's just, it's a really tough one. I guess if I had any moral advice or just any advice on this, it's just try to use your head, understand that there are some of these elements that are going into what you're hearing and just, I wouldn't hop on board the conspiracy theory train all the time, even though sometimes it's just plain fun.
Oh yeah.
But it's just use your head, talk to other people, and at the end of the day, your decision making won't be perfect, but you should at least be able to look at yourself in the mirror after looking at something critically and intelligently and just be like, you know what, I'm going to make a decision on it one way or another, win or lose. And if the decision that I made on this ends up being wrong, well, then freaking fess up to it and don't be a baby and just be like, well, I'll change. I don't know.
Be open to change. Love everyone. Think the best of people.
I love you.
I love you, Jordan. Thanks for letting me be on this podcast, man.
Yeah, this wasn't really planned, but I enjoyed the conversation and the program did not crash. So I am pleased with that.
You gotta make sure to press that save button, big dog.
Yeah, what if I just like, oops, I didn't do it. This is another wasted one.
Oh no, dude. No. I mean, this is still a great conversation though. So this would not be wasted time if it wasn't recorded for sure. So
it's true. We talked about some interesting things. And yeah, I'm not gonna drag out this exit. We're done. Goodbye, Adam.
See you, kids.